everyone, this is already week 2 of our Craftuary challenge. The Craftuary challenge, if you're new here, is a challenge to get you crafting and creating during the month of January and to start the year in a creative way. There's a new fun project for you to do and follow along through our tutorials every single week. Last week we made a 2025 calendar, which you can still do if you haven't had a chance. The video is linked in the description below. And this is the schedule for the next few weeks. You're gonna be doing a pop-up next week and a mini journal binder in 2 weeks, but today we're gonna focus on our week 2 project, which is a upcycling project to create an aesthetic storage box for your desk, reusing old boxes that you have, old materials, and just decorating it to create both a functional and aesthetic product. Just like last week's project, this project is available to any kind of level. Depending on your skills, you might be able to use more advanced techniques and do more complicated things and use different types of materials, but you don't have to be an experienced crafter to follow along and take part in this project. It's also a project that can be long or short depending on how detailed you want it to be. Again, we would love to see what you make for this project. Don't hesitate to tag us at Cora Crea Crafts and hashtag Craftuary Challenge. Also, we would love to hear your feedback on this project, so don't hesitate to share what you think about it and about the video in the comments. So let's get started with this week 2 Upcycled storage box project. So the first thing you're gonna need for this project is an old box. It can be a box from a gift you got at Christmas, so something quite sturdy and nice. It could be a packaging box, so maybe something that's less aesthetic to start with, like this one here. It could be a box you received socks in, or your planner was in. It could be really any type of box. It can also be a lot smaller than the examples I'm showing you right now. These are quite large, but you can also decide to do something much smaller if you would like. To give you a few examples, I'm going to show you a few projects that I've made before where I used very different types of boxes. So one of them was a box that envelopes came in, so a bit of a less sturdy box, and this is what I ended up making with it after decorating it entirely. So the envelopes are still in there, and by the way, this project is great for you to store things, even things that might not be very important. It just looks so much better and so fun and so personal to have your own boxes. So this was one of them. Then I have a box that I use for my papers. So if you want to make something that will fit your papers, make sure you choose a format of box that will be in line with that. So this one, I wanted all my A5 things to fit in there, so sticker sheets and papers, and this is why I chose this box. And my last example here is one of the very first upcycled box I made. That must have been 3 years ago, most probably. It's a big square box. It fits a lot of things. I also added some metal corners and a metal handle to make it easier to open it, but also just for aesthetic reason. And on this one, as you can see, there's like less decoration than on the 2 other ones. So as I said, you can really decorate as much as you want or as little as you want. It's really a personal preference. For my box, I decided to go with this pretty pink box that I received for Christmas. There was a pajama inside. For any box that you choose, I highly recommend using some sticker paper sheets like these ones. You can choose either a craft paper color or a white color, depending on what kind of look you want to achieve. For the 3 examples that I showed earlier, I've used the craft paper color for all of them, and you can see that they look a little bit more vintage. But if you want like a lighter look, maybe something more colorful, brighter for spring, for example, you can also choose a white sticker paper color. And I'm adding the link underneath if you're interested in buying some of those. They're very easily found on Amazon. If you don't want to purchase them, you can also use regular paper. I just like them because they're very convenient. They're already adhesive and it just makes it easier to cover your box and to make a nice plain background on your box before you start decorating it. So I decided to go for the lighter background, which is unusual for me because, as you saw, all my previous upcycled boxes, I've used the more vintage craft paper for my background. But I decided this time to try something different and challenge myself and make something in a bit of a different style. So I went for the white paper. This step can be a little long because you might have to calculate the size of your box, cut a little bit, apply the paper, reapply potentially if it's been badly applied, which it might happen, especially with sticker paper. But in my opinion, this step is super important because it will enable you to start decorating your box from scratch with a homogeneous plain background, which is not the case necessarily if you leave the background of your box. So for example, if I just left the pink background as it is, I would have this pink hue no matter what I add on it, especially working with certain materials that I want to work with, like tissue paper, which will blend in with the background. So in my opinion, it is a very important step. However, you can skip this step if you want to. It's not 100% necessary. You can start decorating directly on the box you have, but I don't recommend it. I've done this for every box that I did before and the result has always been much nicer than when decorating directly on a box, especially older boxes or boxes with colors or text. You really want to cover that up. This whole process is really as simple as peeling off the backing paper of your sticker paper and just applying the paper all over your box. Make sure you cover the back, the bottom, the inside if you want the inside to also be covered depending on like what's inside the box, the edges. So it's just about making sure you have like a nice even surface when you're done. Now the fun part can really start, and it's all about decorating, and we're gonna start by decorating the background of the box. So we'll add more details after we do this part, but first we wanna really set up the background with some colors that we like or some textures that we like. And one of the materials that I really like to use for these kinds of projects is rice paper, because these rice papers really blend in super well with the background and it really creates an organic look where it doesn't really look like you've like stuck a lot of different papers. It looks like it might have been printed on there, and I think that really creates something very nice. So I love to use rice papers. Those are a few examples of rice papers that I have. Some of those are also available in my shop. Some are from like older collections that we don't have anymore. But if you don't have any rice papers and you want to use something similar, you can use napkins, because napkins have a really similar texture to rice paper and they will also blend in super well. So if you have some nice napkins with flowers, patterns, or whatever it is, don't hesitate. You can use those and they will look very nice on your box. Here's just an example of rice paper that I used on a previous box that I made. So all the part on the side here and on the left as well, those are all rice papers and they really look like they blend in. Same with this background, the kind of newspaper background, and the houses at the bottom are rice paper. This box is an example of when I didn't use rice paper and I just used stamps and other types of papers. And this box is an example of using just a kind of wrapping paper. If you know the owl paper from our advent calendars, this is just plainly wrapped with that owl paper all over it. So that's also a possibility. So here we go. Let's put some of our rice paper on our box. I chose this green and white pattern paper. I want to create kind of a garden theme. So this rice paper will fit really well. I'm also putting the link below if you're interested in a specific rice paper. So I like to cut the edges rough, so instead of using scissors, aside from the white edges, I'm just tearing through the rice paper to create some more natural deckled edges for the rice paper. And then in order to apply the rice paper, you can use regular glue, but I would really recommend using one of these two types of materials. I like using gesso under the rice paper to like first apply it and adding a layer on top of it as well. And then I like to cover everything up after I'm done with Mod Podge. So this is exactly this process that I'm following here, applying a layer of gesso under the rice paper, putting the rice paper on top wherever you want it to be, then adding another layer of gesso on top of the rice paper to really make it stay in place and also to blend it in nicely. Gesso isn't exactly a glue, but it does the job really well in my opinion. You can also use Mod Podge interchangeably instead of the gesso for this process, and that's perfectly fine. We will be using a little bit of Mod Podge later on to make sure everything sticks and stays together, but right now I'm going to mix my background with some other type of rice paper, just another color and another style to just bring the background to life. You don't have to fill the entire background. You will see I'm also leaving some white spaces because I will be adding other types of decoration there. Before moving on to the next step of this project, make sure you don't forget the sides of the box, the bottom, the edges, and even the inside if that's also a place you would like to decorate. When you feel like you have enough of a background and you're ready to add more details, this is when we start step 5. So in this case here, I'm going to be using some stencils, some washi tapes, and some stamps. So I'm gonna start with the stencils. I'm gonna use a green color because I want to continue on with the theme I started, which is a vintage garden theme. So I'm using the stencil. Make sure you don't move so that the pattern is clear. You can use the stencil over the rice paper and it will color the area. If you want to make the pattern of the stencil very obvious, apply more pressure, apply more ink. If you want to make it more dimmed, just make sure you don't press too much with your tool so that the pattern is just very light. I'm doing a little bit of both so that the pattern is not completely even and it just kind of blends in with the white of the background sticker paper that we have. So I apply more pressure in certain areas, less pressure in other areas to reach that effect. Other tools that are fun to play with are washi tapes, pet tapes, stickers. In this case, I gathered a bunch of different tapes that I had that would fit the theme because I wasn't really sure what to use at first. So I ended up with this Upcycled flowers tape. I'm trying to use all parts of this tape, so I'm again cutting around the flower naturally with my hand, just kind of tearing the washi tape so that it looks organic, and placing the flowers in different places on the box. And I'm also going to be using the background of the tape, so not completely cutting out the flower, but still using some of the background. And I'm also going to be using the little labels, so I'm just cutting those and leaving those to the side. We're gonna apply them later on during the process. My next step is to use thinner washi tape, in this case the knots, the Celtic knots washi tape, and I'm choosing the brown one because we already have a lot of green, so instead of having all greens, I think it's going to look nice with a touch of brown. I like to add borders to everything, and this is no different. I'm going to apply the washi tape all around the box, on all the edges, on the top, bottom, on the sides, and on the inside. I think this really adds something to the design because it really frames the layout and design of the box. When doing projects like this, sometimes washi tapes are just not sticky enough. They're really made for just regular paper, but once you start adding textures and different types of materials, sometimes the washi tapes just don't stick enough. So this is the case here, and that is why I'm adding Mod Podge. So I'm adding a little layer of Mod Podge under the washi tape, and then I'm also adding another layer above the washi tape. And this not only helps the washi tape stay in place, but it also helps the rest of the box, including the rice paper, some of the other washi tapes that I applied earlier, to really stay in place. This is important, especially in the edges, because when you open and close the boxes, there's going to be repetitive bending and friction, and these are the first parts that will come apart if they're not glued properly, all the edges. Something else that's quite fun to use for such a project is stamps. In this case, I just pulled out a few botanical style and garden stamps that I had. Those are older styles from our website. I'm using some brown ink for these stamps and placing them in different areas of the top. Something that I learned while doing this is that using an acrylic block didn't really work for me, so it didn't stamp the full pattern or the full design properly while using the acrylic block, just because the box is not 100% like hard, so it's not like applying on a fully hard surface. It bends slightly in the middle, which means that with the acrylic block I'm unable to really press hard or evenly in the middle, and so the pattern didn't transfer properly. So what I did after realizing that is I just stopped using the acrylic block and I just used my hands. This allowed me to really press everywhere I wanted to press with my hands and get a better result of the stamp. It's totally okay if the pattern doesn't transfer fully. It gives a bit of a vintage look, a bit of an aged look. So as you can see on a lot of the stamped patterns, especially on the sides, my designs end up not being, very clear, and I think I'm fine with that because it just looks good that way. So don't worry too much about your stamps being stamped perfectly. I think it just adds a little more personality this way. For your next step, you might want to cover the edges, so that could be staining them with ink. For example, here I'm using a little bit of a green. It's not covering it completely, but it adds a bit of a more natural look that fits with the rest of the design of the box, but you can use any kind of color. You could also use paint, for example, and actually I'm going to be using a gold paste to make some of the more obvious edges disappear and to add a little bit of a shimmer to my box. But first I'm quickly adding those little labels that I got from the Apothecary Flowers washi tape and placing them on my box on the top and on the sides. So the paste I'm going to use is one of our elven paste. This one is called the Golden Dragon, and it's a bit of a more subtle paste because it's not plain gold. It just has this really nice metallic shine to it once you apply it, and it's quite creamy, so it looks really good in different lights. The reason I decided to apply this paste is because I still had a lot of pink edges of my box despite adding the washi tapes, despite adding the green ink to stain the edges. It just didn't cover everything, and I really wanted to get rid of those pink edges because I thought it just doesn't work with the theme of my box. So I decided to apply this color shift metallic paste. So I'm just applying a small layer throughout the places I want to apply it, so that's all the edges, and I'm adding a second layer once it dries just to make sure that no pink is visible. So before finishing this project, I wanted to add a few more details, so I grabbed another stencil and decided to apply some of the paste on it to give a little bit extra texture. To apply the paste evenly, I would recommend using a flat tool, a palette knife, or even a brush. I like the brush because you can really control where the paste is going more than any of the other tools. To finish off the project, I added a few postal stamps from our postal stamp pet tape, but you could be adding any type of sticker or anything else you feel like. You can decorate this box as much as you want or as little as you want. Again, this is your project. You make it your own. Obviously, this video is very personal to me. I make things that I enjoy making, styles that I enjoy making, but feel free to use your own style, the colors that you like, and really make this your own project. This is a really fun project, no matter the size, time you have, or the experience you have. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Plus, it's a really fun way to upcycle, keep things that you have instead of buying more. These boxes can be used for so many different things. You could be using them as a gift box for someone special. You could be using it to store your crafting tools on your desk. I'm going to be using this one to store my ink pads. You could be using it to store your washi tapes, to store your stamps, to store stickers, or it could just be purely decorative if you would like to use it that way. But it's a great way to store things and to keep your desk or area neat and aesthetically pleasing. So I really hope you liked watching this video. This was a lot of fun to make. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this project and if you would like to see more upcycling projects in the future. I would really love to see what you make, so please let me know if you end up making this project by using the hashtag Craftuary challenge or joining our Discord group, where we have a specific chat just for this challenge. If you need help or any advice, this is a really good place to be, plus it's a great community. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next week for our pop-up project for week 3 of Craftuary challenge. Bye!